10 o'clock, Compliance Tuesday. Not the first Tuesday of the year, but it's the first Compliance Tuesday. Welcome to 2025. An overview. It's still early in the year, so it's not, although there are specific topics that we will address later this year, we'll start with an overview. For those who don't know ProductIP, we are a software as a service. We are also a knowledge as a service solution. We help companies to make mission critical decisions around product and supply chain issues. My name is Casper de Horst. I'm one of the co-founders, and per January 1st, my semi-official title is Compliance Rebel. So probably some of you will say that that's a good fit. If there's any issues with sound or video, just let me know in the chat. You might know ProductIP also from sponsoring Kimberly Bos, first Dutch skeleton Olympic medal winner. The inspiration for today comes from the European train station in Brussels, the legislative train schedule with 7 major platforms, which are the major topics, the major agenda points from the EU. And from there, they build up trains and let trains depart and sometimes derail, and most of them actually reach destination. So the trains is a synonym of development of a piece of legislation, and the platforms are the main topics. You will see on each slide, where possible, I have put the URL there that you can click on and reach out to the web for more information. And obviously the slides will be made available to you all. It's an overview. It's an overview session today. Join me in that session, and come in with comments in the chat, or into the Q&A. I was surprised actually when I was making. Even I was surprised. Making the overview. I didn't realize how much it was, and so probably there's legislative references that you think, okay, I haven't heard about it as well. Let me know your remarks in the chat. I look at different sessions of information. We can look at 2024, but actually we need to look at what has before 2024. What becomes relevant in the 2025. Okay, I got to remark that chat's not working for anybody. Q&A is, so your Q&A can be used. And I will look at what was released in 2024, because not everything that was released in 2024 will be relevant in 2025. Might become relevant in 26 or 27 or even after. But there's a reason why there are such long term sometimes. Sometimes it's just you will need the time given to prepare. Yeah. And what we also see is that many of those legislations these days have what they call delegated act. So it's more like a framework, and within the framework, the European Commission has the right via delegated act to fill in certain details. So sometimes the legislation is there and it even has not given any things to be dealt with in time until delegated acts are coming. And that makes it interesting to follow, at least for us and for you using ProductIP. So in no particular order, you could use alphabet or publication dates, but I didn't do that. I'm just going to drive you through what we have found, and I also try for myself, and it could be a good way to deal with it for companies itself. I always try to imagine what is impact. Yeah, and I try to categorize it. Does it impact the product? Do I need to change the product? Does it impact the process? Do I need to do things different after this than I did before? Does it influence supply chain or the way I deal with partners in my supply chain? That is very, very important. So process, impact, supply chain. And then last but not least, packaging. And I don't mean packaging as the product, because that's part of product and packaging impact. No, packaging artwork. Do I need to change things on the outside of a label, artwork, manual, and slash digital artwork, which means content on the website? I try to use those four corners: product, packaging, process, supply chain, artwork. And I try to impact, I wrote it down there as well. You will see impact, process, supply chain. It's not a complete overview, but you will see those words coming back. So let's go to Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. We like those shorts, no? CSRD. There's also CSDDD. Its aim is to set goals for companies on sustainability and start to report on it. It started with the large companies. It actually was already there. There was already NFRD. So it starts with large companies, but in 2025, we will see that medium-sized companies will start to set goals as well. Most of the medium-sized companies actually have been already involved in answering Q&As of larger companies. So in all these kind of legislation where you say, okay, this is for large companies, I also say, if your customer is one of those large companies, then this probably will affect you earlier than you expected, sooner rather than later. It requires detailed reporting on environmental and social performance. That means collecting data from the supply chain. And perhaps no information from supply chain partners will mean that you need to say bye-bye to those supply chain partners. You will see a rhythm in the way the legislation actually is addressing things. Yeah? CBAM is not influence a product per se. You could say, is this product compliance legislation? It's not per se, it's actually taxation, it's like a tariff. It's trying to get a level playing field on specific metal products, aluminium products, where the European industry had to invest in making these CO2 neutral, or at least using CO2 neutral energy sources. And if others that are not in the EU don't have those investments, they can produce steel and aluminium at a lower cost. So it's a border adjustment mechanism, it's a tariff. But I thought it's relevant to put it here because it requires information from your supply chain, because you need to be able to calculate what is the emission, and based on that you need to start purchasing CO2 compensation certificates. Reporting is already there 2025, but purchasing CO2 compensation starts in 2026. So this will definitely influence the way you deal with certain products. Is this relevant for everybody? Well, if you start to purchase containers full of all kind of screws and that kind of material, or really steel products, then you are really into this. CBAM. General Product Safety Regulation. Wow, I think if this regulation deserves a prize for the one that had the most communication in the last year. Everybody dived on it as if it was the new miracle, stopping everything at the border that is not compliant. You can hear from the tone of my voice as a compliance rebel, I disagree with that full-heartedly. It actually is just something adding on what was already there and didn't really work very well. What has been done is ensuring that the General Product Safety Directive, now regulation, at least fits all the new kind of supply chain roles that we have in the market, like fulfillment and online sellers. If you really look into what is in there, most of those things were already there, but they just rewrote it, make it a little bit more clear. I think lawyers liked it very much. There's also been a lot of discussion about, okay, do I need to have now a web address on my artwork or not? Is it just for consumer products? What about business products? Come on, if you are a company, why you don't want your web address on the packaging artwork? You know, what's wrong with that? Sometimes I really ask myself, do we really need legislation to address certain issues like traceability, or can consumers reach out to me when there is something wrong with the product? Because it doesn't change the reality. If there's really something wrong with the product, that will be the reality. So to be able to deal with those kind of aspects and ensure that there is traceability and a fast response, shouldn't that be a natural discussion within companies? How are we actually going to deal with that? You don't need legislations for that, all right? So it's applicable since December 13, and 2025 is first fulfillment year. Somebody's asking web address or email address. Well, the idea, Jeroen, in this case was that it should not be a non-monitored address. So an info ad that nobody's looking at, it doesn't work. That would be like having a desk in a store where people actually listen to customers complaining and then nobody does anything with it. So it's a web address, and on the web, then you need to direct customers, for example, via a form to a dedicated email address, or it would need to be a email address that is at least monitored. So the intention is not to miss out following up on signals from the market. That's the intention. Yeah. You can do both if you want. One thing that is not related to a product per se, but very relevant for everybody because it makes things into context. So that's why I like this introduction session of the year, is that there's already a process going on for a very long time in the EU to, it's called like a single digital gateway, to ensure that there is one way to work with governments. And we have a lot of borders and we have a lot of custom systems. And I think the aim here is to combine 100 plus systems into a new single window environment for EU customs. And obviously, one of the agenda points is to be able to block products that are going to the EU market without having any clear information about who's actually responsible for the product. That would be something that they need to address. So there's a link between this product, data, entities, supply chain role, digital product passport even. But this is not the digital product passport database per se. It's a customs project. And the terms are very long, you know, there's targets for this to 2030, 2035. 2027, they aim to have it live, and they want to start in 2028 by making this applicable for drop shipping. So the ones that will face this first are companies selling products directly one-on-one to European consumers. And they will need to be addressing all kind of information on the product's compliance as well. Yeah, and that will be similar as things that you need to have in a technical file. So that will be interesting also in terms of an interface. Look at Surpass project, and Michelle Gatalola has a very nice presentation with a link there. Yeah? So here you see things sometimes combining. Published before 2024, the battery and waste battery regulations. Interesting, eh? It's paper and packaging and products waste regulation. Here's battery waste. It's interesting why they use the waste as a second letter. Anyway, batteries. We have them. You have them. There are many products, and we need to stop making batteries that we can only use one time. And when we use batteries that we can recharge, we need to make them so that we can recharge them as many times as possible, but also inform consumers about the quality of that battery that you are going to buy that you can recharge. It's a little bit like with energy labels on lamps, you know, it will give light, but how long does it give light, and what will be the reduction of light over time, like an energy label, like a quality. We will have like a thing like an energy label for battery label, something like this 1000 milliamp battery is good for so many recharge cycles, and after that it still has 99% capacity, and another one will maybe have 80%. So there will be benchmarks and there will be quality indicators for the normal batteries. But the world of the batteries changes first for the quantities that are growing fastest, and these are EV, These are power stations, so batteries for you at home, 2 kilowatt hour plus 2000 watt to be delivered per hour, at least for 1 hour. Plus, so the large volume part of the market, that what is growing fastest is regulated first, which makes sense because inside those products are actually batteries or battery cells, and those battery cells are quite similar to the AA and AAA type and other batteries that we use as or used to buy as a consumer. So with that, the market is already forced, the market in this case, the manufacturers of batteries are already forced to actually start to commit to tell us how much of what materials are you using, how much recycled material are you using, and European Union is setting different kind of benchmarks. I think with all kind of legislative developments, we often tend to look at it from the final part of the supply chain, importer, branding, retail. I would say look also at it to the manufacturer side. Who has everything to lose from these kind of legislation? Let me ensure that nobody calls me. They need to have time to set to this new legislation. Light means of transport and other products will face 2027 the requirement that you need to be able to replace a battery. And is a battery pack a battery? A battery pack is already something that you can replace. It doesn't really make sense to replace the battery in a battery pack. However, light means of transport, there are still many bicycles or scooters that have battery packs that you actually could not replace. So then you need to throw away a perfect bike just because one battery is dead. That is the intention. We should not throw away products simply because the battery is dead. That will be redesigned. So impact here is definitely also product, supply chain, process, because you need to have due diligence in your supply chain partner. I come to address this and other issues later because it's a choice to have products with a battery in many a case, not in all, but in many cases. Do you really need to ship with batteries? No? Okay, let's look at what's then published in 2024. You're really in for maybe a surprise on some of these topics that I will share with you. Eco design. It's an extension of what we have. You know, we already had eco design legislation. This is typically now a framework where there is the potential for delegated acts by the European Commission to fill in certain requirements. Framework, sustainable requirements for products. They are looking for those products that are using a lot of energy first, and also what we can call capital products that need an investment by the consumer. And you think about refrigerators, for example, and air conditionings. And what is driving the digital product passport most? I think this is one of the legislations that drive it most. You know, it's like an energy label is part of a digital product passport, but this will become a little bit more. And this also ties up with repairability or right to repair. It has different kind of angles, and it's part of the platform that wants to have a sustainable world. And this is definitely one of the drivers. Process is definitely different, but the question is it the process at your end, or do you need to verify if the process has been done on the other hand? They need to make conscious decisions when you design a product about repairability and durability. And I think it makes sense to throw away some products just because there are no spare parts. Not addressed here, but in other legislation connected to this. Creating and maintaining specifications. You know, if you do a due diligence or you do a criteria for a product and you make specifications, are you actually keeping up your expectations? So product, I think definitely will influence product. Maybe it will result in the fact that there will be more modular products and there will be a little bit less easy for small quantities to make very specific products, more like a standard way to make products. We'll see. I think here's the manufacturer will drive product design, not so much as the retailer. But the retailer, if you are doing private label, which many of you do, it will become your digital product passport as such. So definitely a process change. Which products first? Well, follow ProductIP, use ProductIP, because these are delegated acts that will release the way to go for different products, and we'll see this rolling forward from 2025. The construction products regulation, it's also not new, it's already there. It's a refit, very long agenda. I think it's smart that they addressed this first when you are setting in sustainable agenda. You know, you're talking about buildings, and if you don't start regulating materials used, or the way we use materials, or the way we build houses or offices or anything else, that structure, if we don't address it now, we will have a problem in 20, 30, 40 years. So the agenda for this is very long, and I think they did a good job in addressing that now. So this is something, if you are in the construction products industry, or if you are in the DIY stores, you're also selling construction materials, will definitely be high on your agenda. You will see different kind of substances not being allowed in different kind of products. Maybe some products be phasing out in a way, which you cannot basically control, because some products maybe cannot be made with the old materials when there are requirements for new materials. But it will influence us very slowly, but it makes sense. We don't want to run in sustainability troubles when we are demolishing a building in 30 years that we are start to build today. Yeah, it also has DPP requirements, digital product passport requirements. It's not easy. There's a lot of products under the scope. Then again, having said that, that scope is very broad at the end of the supply chain, but it's very specific at the beginning. It's I don't expect that the one that makes all kind of kit or tile glue is also making PVC gutters. So it's different industries that start to deal with it, but definitely will change your world if you are in the business of construction materials. Not new, refit, classification, labeling, and packaging of chemicals. I think it's a natural development. There are, we know more and more about the impact of different chemicals, so we are updating our classifications of hazards. There are even some font size requirements. Don't use Comic Sans on warnings. That makes sense, right? And we're not just buying bottles with chemicals from a store, looking at a digital at a label. We're also buying them online, so there are also digital labeling requirements. What kind of warnings do I have? Definitely something to consider, because many companies have actually websites for e-commerce that, when I look at them, are completely incapable of dealing with the information flow as required by legislation. I don't expect that the ones that are programming an e-commerce platform reading everything from Brussels. They should, but the question is, are they? Probably not. There are some challenges there. So you might start to address certain topics with your software providers. You might point them to us. Maybe we can coach them. Not entirely new. Published 2024. Was a lot of discussion in the year before on microplastics and Christmas decoration and glitters, and it's published. Its reach is chemical legislation. They publish it, and there's almost no period for transition. And targeted phase bans from microplastics is not different as from glitters. From 2025 onwards, we have bans on microplastics. Again, this is not something that you can address or deal with per se at the end of the supply chain. This is something that those who are manufacturing need to deal with. So this is about managing performance of supply chain rather than on products. Are they aware of this? If not, why? How can be? If they are in this business of this product, why aren't they aware of this? Very specific, probably too far away from many of your desks, but you can imagine that it is good to know who is supplying what kind of medical devices at what moment and what kind of context. So there will be a database EU DayMed, this is a digital or medical database. Gradually rolling out 2025, and it's different product categories that need to be in there. But what is interesting is also supply chain notifications. So for critical medical devices, there will become an obligation for manufacturers to inform authorities about interruptions or discontinuations in the supply chain. I think we learned a little bit from COVID here. Yeah. Maybe very specific for some, but maybe bread and butter for others. ROS, not new, connected to electronic and electrical products, reduction of hazardous substances in EEE. It's continuously developing, and it has now some updates on certain exemptions and hazardous substances, mainly on cadmium and cadmium-related substances. So it's what we call it's a refit. So it's an update on the old one. It's called a delegated directive, which is like it's like a little bit more than an amendment, because it really has to be voted on, and it has also to be translated into national legislation as such. Again, the URL to this revision is there. It's not ChatGPT, but it is Artificial Intelligence Act. When we see more and more products on the market using this kind of technology, we also need to address all kind of risks around it. And that's what it's doing. It's not entirely new, but this act is very, very specific because it also has to do with fundamental rights. When I'm using certain products, are they violating my rights? Did I sign up for something that I actually should not, or that actually should not even be offered? And I think it's a very complex legislation. Is this for everybody? No, but many of you are more and more into products that have apps, and those products have software, and they get updates, and maybe they have some intelligence in there. So if you have coffee makers that start to know a little bit more about what kind of coffee I like, maybe that's called AI. It introduces risk-based compliance obligations for AI systems. Yeah, so very specific, but it had to be addressed by the legislation office. So it's there, but you can see already things start to become more and more complex. Let me look at some of the questions. What specific documents do I need to collect EUDR? That's too far away yet in my presentation. There will be coming a revision on the detergents regulation. It's not just CLP, yeah, it's markings, but it also has to do with what kind of substances do we actually want in those detergents, household cleaning products, soaps, etc. And they will have digital product passport. So the proposal is adapted, and we will see implementation in the coming months, probably. Typically something that has sustainability aspects, biodegradability requirements, microbiologically cleaning product rules. Ooh, different words. Typically something that the industry has to pick up. But if we are shifting from making things at European entities to non-European entities, you need to really consider who is picking up which part of the roles in the supply chain. Is it the importer? Is it the brand owner? Am I the brand owner? Am I actually detergent manufacturer in that sense? I see the discussion with many companies that I talk with. do we really are we really so vain that we need to have our mark and our address on the product, or can it be our mark with the address of a very, dedicated European company that knows what they do in this kind of product or product category and can mitigate risks? It's like a license model, there's many companies that offer products with a Disney license. So this could be a model for you to put some of the effort to deal with legislation at certain positions in the supply chain. And yeah, it's their right to earn some money, but then they mitigate your risk as well. Not entirely AI, but software, Cyber Resilience Act. More and more products are connected. There are or could be risks that we put products on the market that actually are backdoor. We need to prevent consumers from insecure products and services. It has to do also with locks that can be hacked, or smart homes, etc. Cybersecurity requirements that manufacturers and vendors of such products shall comply with. This is now again typically such an aspect. If you want to retail products under your brand, or they come with an app, and your product can only run with this app, and even that app doesn't have your brand. If your product with your brand cannot be run without that app, and that app doesn't have your brand, actually this app becomes your branded app as well. Because if I cannot use your product with your brand without that app, you force me to use this app. And this is typically an area where expertise is required from the one that makes a product and offers the product and maintains the product, because you don't want to change security settings when you have over-the-air updates. This is already very complex. Maybe this is a good way to show what is complex, because I think chemicals are complex as well. So do you really want to be in the responsible role for every aspect? That's my point. Also, you can see sustainable. This is one other waste frame directive. This is about the food that we throw away and the apparel that we throw away. Maybe the clothing that you have wore 1 or 2 times and then throw away. There is a compliance part that you can call extended producer responsibility, EPR, that is not so much related to the product, but to offering the product to the consumer. And what happens to the product when the consumer doesn't use it? And there is, of course, a relationship. If you make a product so that you need to throw it away too soon, that's not good. If you make it such that you cannot disassemble and recycle it, that's not good. So those are product design aspects. But what are you doing to guide consumers how to be responsible with waste? And that's EPR. And we have now under the Waste Frame Directive, which is not new, it's a recast. There has been this legislation for a long time. It obliges EU member states to separate collect textile waste as of January 2025. So there's targets set on how much textiles are going to be recycled. It's very relevant. But that means that there will be EPR schemes in countries for textiles, and like with electronics or batteries or with packaging. Yeah. 2008. It's an update on the Waste Directive from 2008. Product Liability Directive. I think it's actually underlighted in the last year. I think it should have been more in the spotlight, more than General Product Safety Regulation. This one hadn't been updated in 35 years, so definitely needed to know what internet was and internet sales and fulfillment service providers. So it's new, but it's not entirely new, but it's definitely fit for this period. One of the interesting things is that if you cannot demonstrate that you did proper due diligence before you put the product on the market, then you are already, let's say, guilty of the accident that happened. That's interesting. Well, it makes sense. If you place a product on the market, you should do a proper risk assessment, which probably means sometimes testing along harmonized standards that address the anticipated use. If you cannot prove that you did it, then you assumed already to be responsible for the damages that occurred. That's a significant change. And there is no threshold. So there used to be let's say a couple of €100 on damages, and when it's under that damage, you could not use the product liability directive to declare somebody liable, but that threshold is gone. And we have another piece of legislation that allows class acts to combine many acts in one. So it's interesting for different kind of organizations to look at what's happening in the market. But no technical file means liable. I always use the example in Germany. In the months like maybe it's already October, but definitely November and December, January, February, you need to have winter tires. And if you don't have winter tires and you are involved with your car in an accident, you are already assumed also to be liable for that accident, even if it's not entirely your fault, because you weren't prepared. If you want to choose reading the General Product Safety Regulation or the Product Liability Directive, I would choose this one. One of the things that is interesting for some of you is that it also addresses potentially authorized representative to be responsible for damages, and that could, and we are offering authorized representative service for Europe, but that could definitely influence the way this service is being offered in the market today, because either those services will become very restricted, a little bit like the medical reps. They will have schemes to be able to monitor production, almost like certification. How otherwise they could monitor risk? But anyway, price will go up. I would say that because this liability needs to be insured as well. I won't be surprised if for many actually the AR services will end. We are considering, but we are offering it still. But and we obviously inform everybody about these considerations. But product liability directive is something to watch for, especially from a business operation point of view. Forced labor. Have you heard about that? Published December 12th, 2024. Oh, the last month of the year was an interesting one. Enforcement to begin 2025, 2006. Supply chain due diligence. You should not place products on the EU market that have been made with forced labor. This includes parts of the product or substances used in the product. If you have no idea where products are being made, in general, if you look at how much supply chain due diligence actually is in legislation, if you have no idea who is the second tier or third tier of production, then you really start to run into problem in the coming years. When sustainability becomes very relevant, then obviously marketing is jumping on the bandwagon and calls things green and calls things sustainable and with great environmental impact, etc. If you cannot substantiate those claims, you should not make them, not only on packaging, but also on digital artwork. I bet you that your competition will fight you on this as well, because it's just unfair marketing practices as such. Does it influence the product? Not if it really is durable, if you can be repaired, if it does have social and environmental impact, but you need to have an option to sustain that. I would say certification programs are a good way to deal with that. There are many kind of logos used in the market that should not be used today. And I really think when you start to look at artwork in the coming years, start to look at this. If green or durability becomes a requirement for everybody, you also should not use that requirement as marketing. Don't sell coffee makers and say our coffee makers are electrical safe, when electrical safe coffee makers is a requirement. Similar now for green, durability or repairability. Right to repair. Well, in that case, you can say, okay, what do I have to do with it as a consumer? It's interesting, but as a product, well, if products need to be able to repair, and we start with the most expensive ones first, then others that offer repair need to have access to information. So you have certified repair companies, but you need to be able to supply these companies with repair information and parts. So there will be obligations to be able to submit information to those that are certified to ask for it, but there will also be requirements for spare parts. Having said that, if you need to have spare parts available for a couple of years and you are in the market for every year buying a couple of containers of what's available on air conditionings for a certain price, you will already start to run into troubles because you would need to be able to maintain uh, services and parts for all those models. This is a typical way to demonstrate to you that the way you are doing business might be influenced by legislation that you feel, okay, what do I need to do with the right to repair? I'm not repairing, I'm just asking somebody to repair. No, no, no. It's also about having spare parts available. Yeah. Again, if you are the brand, then you are the one that is responsible for ensuring that this is all going to happen. I like drinking water, but that's not this. This is a delegated regulation, 2024-371, which means it's an update on an existing one. Obviously, we had legislation on drinking water. This influences parts and products connected to water supply. Yeah, this could be a refrigerator with an ice machine with a fixed connection. Could be a materials used in kitchens and bathrooms, but also construction products. It makes sense, you know, products and materials in contact with drinking water. This is not food contact material. This is different. This is the drinking water part, not just boilers, but also piping. What is interesting for everybody, and don't forget, European market is still driving towards harmonization. Obviously, there's a lot of national legislation connected to drinking water, but here we are moving into harmonizing requirements, which makes sense because the water doesn't know where it is, and the water doesn't behave differently where it is. So it doesn't matter if you have water in a boiler connected to your tap in the kitchen in Holland or in Germany or France. The water doesn't know, but what you want is you want good drinking water. So by agreeing on what we call good drinking water, we can also harmonizing requirements. Harmonizing means one set of requirements for the entire EU. And that's why we're moving to for more and more products on drinking water, which will make life a lot easier for a big part of a market supplying those products. Again, process, there will be a registration scheme for those products, and it's very risky, you know, drinking water. We should not compromise the quality. So there will be notified bodies involved in testing or assessing products or production facilities. But in general, it's good news because if you need to take care of products and assessments all by yourself for every EU member state, or if you can do it for the whole of the EU, definitely it's better. What do I need to do with Critical Raw Materials Act? That could be a good response. Well, if you are in electronics appliances, product with batteries and motors, in general, the EU has a goal to become more independent, especially for parts and materials that are not available at a large scale everywhere. Cobalt, lithium, rare earths. So what you will see is that for products that are using those a lot, and there is more and more products with batteries, there will be requirements to start to recycle materials and or indicate how much is there. You know, the France legislation already had the requirement to say how much lithium is there, how many rare earths is there, how much palladium is there in those products, and how much of that is recycled, coming from recycled sources. It's definitely process. Yeah. So we can minimize the use of materials in those parts and components. That is a manufacturer driven process, but he should or they should tell you what is the outcome, and you need to be able to trace that and sometimes to report that or maybe make it part of public information. So if you think, where is this all coming from? It comes from Critical Raw Materials Act, and that's why I'd put it there. It's one of those high-level helicopter views act that is driven down later into requirements for being transparent on the way we use certain materials. Then, last part. What do we expect to be published in 2025? Well, should be almost there any day now. Packaging and packaging waste regulation. Again, we want harmonization on recyclable and labeling standards. We want to get away of hundreds different kind of ways to inform consumers what to do with packaging. But we also want to reduce the total amount of packaging. So there will be targets not only for consumers, but also for B2B and transportation packaging. There will be requirements for packaging efficiencies. That means a lot of due diligence need to be done, and there need to be a declaration. So packaging actually is, for example, under REACH, packaging is already a product. At least it's an item. So they have an item number. You need to have a declaration on that item number that you are complying with the requirements of the packaging waste. So that's definitely process. If we want to reduce the amount of paper and packaging used, it makes sense to move a lot of the explanation to a digital form, digital product passport, and to use a set of icons to inform consumers what to do. This will definitely be a positive impact, but bear with everybody. It takes a lot of time. It also takes time for the EU countries to ensure that trash cans everywhere and waste collection systems everywhere will get proper markings so that consumers actually can make a match. Or this one need to go into the one with the blue icon and the yellow icon. And but I think in 3-4 years from now, we are applauding that we did it. Many people ask me, what do you think will be the first driver for digital product passport or digital product passport or QR codes style shared information? I think this will be the driver. All the processed packaging, the PPWR is also about food and feed, so it's not just non-food. I think this will be the driver together with one other aspects that I will share you later. For many of you who buy products with packaging made or delivered by the ones that supplied you the product, this would be a really good time to consider if this is the right process, and I'll address that in my last slides. Toy safety. There will be a refit that will be coming. I have a special Compliance Tuesday later, I think in February or March on this. We'll wait a little bit for the details, but what is very, very interesting in what I read now is that actually the digital product passport is going to replace the declaration of conformity. What I read is, because you sell the product on the market, you actually already declare that it complies with requirements. Why do you need to have your signature on another document? You are already offering the product on the market. That is already your signature. And why should you just sign for those requirements that have a CE kind of structure? You don't sign for REACH, but REACH is also relevant. You don't sign for POP, but POP is also relevant. So I think toy safety regulation in the new way actually is challenging a lot of the main structures that we have grown familiar with. Definitely worth a special Compliance Tuesday on its own. Food contact material framework, it definitely needs a refit. It's so old, doesn't address all the supply chain roles. But we also need more harmonization. We have harmonization requirements around plastics, but we don't have them around many of the other food contact materials. And again, if you're barbecuing a piece of meat in France or in Holland or in Germany, that meat doesn't know where it lies on steel. You just want to eat meat and not steel. Or could be a vegan beef burger. You want to have a vegan beef burger and not eat your grill. So it's about time that we harmonize standards here. They're definitely lagging behind, and I really hope that they can pull this off. But let's see what comes out of that. When we have AI and when we have requirements around that, obviously we will also have liabilities. So there will be an AI liability directive, adding to the product liability directive. So interesting to see what kind of developments will be there. This is not the same as greenwashing. So this is also about carbon neutral or eco-friendly. This is on a broader scale. What they want to do is they want to also establish a framework where you can say, under what conditions can you make actually claims? What is then scientific evidence? So they definitely need to address here. National laws 2026, 2027. Oh, it takes time. This will take time. And still negotiation going on between all the parties involved. It does make sense, you know, if you're driving marketing around green claims, they need to be right. And if legislation is developed around sustainability, we need to also ensure that when and how claims can be made. But you can see the marketing market will not be as easy in the future. In a short way, active in 2025, of course, general product safety regulation, batteries, already active and expanding into different categories. CBAM, still there. Textile collection, already live under the Waste Frame Directive. The construction product regulation, early implementation phase. So different products, different kind of requirements, slowly. This one describes the roadmap for maybe next decade even. So it's really a framework style. CLP, this is warnings on the chemicals. Keep an eye on that. New labeling requirements by July. The microplastics is there and definitely will have impact. CSRD reporting definitely impact because the next group of companies will be affected. Also, one that many are forgetting is the EU Accessibility Act. I'll see that I didn't put the URL here. I will put the URL in there before I share it with you. I really urge you to start looking at it. It's not just computers and ATM and ticket machines. It's also e-commerce platforms. And many of you are selling also via e-commerce platforms. There are many there are many people with a disability, and that doesn't necessarily be that I cannot move very smoothly. It can also be that I'm colorblind, or I'm not able to hear, or I cannot point my mouse very smoothly to something. And because of that, I'm actually being cancelled out of forms. I may even have some slides actually on that from another presentation, but EAA will definitely be a huge impact if you have not addressed it on the e-commerce platform. A very simple example how it relates to products. If you just have a picture of something that is a warning on your website, that doesn't translate into a warning. So somebody who is visually impaired should be able to buy a product from your website. And this warning should actually be text that can be read out by the engine on the computer that person is using. But if you just have a picture of information and you don't have the warning written out, maybe written out in various languages available in a database, then you are really running into trouble. If you only get pictures from your supply chain partners, then you can see suddenly what is the scale of this. I expect many, if not all, to severely struggle with complying with this in the 2025 deadline. I therefore don't expect that you will get penalties or restrictions immediately, but I do expect market surveillance authorities to take this very, very serious. I think the amount of people that are disabled as part of the society, it will scare you how many people actually have a kind of a disability. You can also turn it around and you say, you are missing out on that part of the market. I would be in favor of addressing those as your marketing goal rather than making unsubstantiated green claims. EAA, European Accessibility Act. Please take a look at that, especially for your e-commerce platform. Yeah. It impacts product packaging design, label artwork, process changes, and supply chain. Eco design, more and more products will be going live under ESPR. And of course, we already have the common charger directive. So USB-C, we know that. Should be active, but it won't for 1 year. Deforestation-free products regulation postponed till the last day of December of this year. We have had several sessions on it. I don't want to explain it a lot, but I would say if you hadn't prepared anything for this, you still have 1 year, but I think it's too short already. You really should have looked in it before the last year. This was delayed because Europe wasn't ready from their side, which is a big flaw. They should have been ready, but we also should have been ready with all of us. Now, I mentioned packaging is going to drive the QR code. I think it will. And there's another one, and that has nothing to do with product legislation, but it is the way retail is moving worldwide. So this is the American market as well as the European market to a new kind of barcode. And this is the 2D QR code. The current EN code is just simply not able to carry enough digits to manage traceability. So when we are moving from SKU-based information to batch-based information, because digital product passport is about information of that batch. So the frequency of getting information from your suppliers is going to be higher. But if you want to have traceability information, you need to have digits, and the EN code wasn't able to support that. So we're moving to a 2D QR code. Not we, it's forced by GS1 and other partners. I suggest you read about that worldwide. But where is this QR code then linking to data? Where's the data stored? At your end. Who's going to deliver that? You know, it could be at your end in ProductIP, but it could be your end on somewhere else. And mind you, this data need to be able to be indexed by search engines, and you should not use consumer scanning QR codes for marketing purposes. So this is anonymous scanning. Otherwise, it would be the same as you and I would meet in a retail store, standing somewhere by accident for the, I don't know, dishwasher section materials, and we are just chit-chatting about walking the dogs, and then we walk away, and then suddenly we get a text message on our phone, hey, you forgot to buy washing powder, or not interested in our offer? And you would say, what? Did you monitor me standing in your store, apparently on this kind of a location? This is the same for scanning QR codes on products. This is not allowed to track information on those are scanning it. So if companies are starting to offer you all kind of schemes saying, actually, we can influence consumer behavior because they're scanning digital product passports. Not good. If you haven't heard about 2D QR codes, definitely read this. Do you agree with me that this is truly a tsunami from Brussels? I think you do. Somebody asks, is the drinking water applicable for products with IPX ratings? No, it's not that. It's just for things connecting to the supply of drinking water, fixed connection products. Do you agree that this is really a tsunami? I think it is. Layer upon layer upon layer. Yeah. So how you can deal with all of this? Well, I think you need to be a little bit like a boxer and get your defense right. If you want to fight them one by one, then you are unable to. You're unable. You need to ensure that actually you are fit as an organization to deal with the intentions of these changes. So this is all about knowing more about with whom you are doing business, supply chain, and also knowing more about what you actually bought and what you actually got. And to do that, not just as SKU, but as per order, increasing traceability and being able to share that. So this is like 4 kind of pillars. And if you see that, then if you can, and then you can deal with that, it doesn't actually matter that much what they are throwing at you from Brussels, because it's not you at the end of the supply chain that needs to change the product. It's the manufacturer that needs to do it. You just need to ensure that they are doing it and are doing it in a proper way. So start to ensure that you really know who you are paying for your products and with whom they are dealing with. That's a challenge by itself. Simple questions. Do you have copies of business licenses? Am I talking with the right people? Have I done audits, etc., etc.? And what do I do when we have new suppliers? How do we onboard them? And I think resize. You have organized, but you also resize. If you are just buying products with packaging at this moment from those that you buy products, they don't make the packaging, they are actually buying the packaging. And if they buy the new packaging every time from a different supplier, then again, in the organized part, they are onboarding a new supplier. And then your supply chain tree becomes way, way too big. So what you probably will see more and more from the ProductIP side is what we call single topic files. Why are you buying a product made by a factory plus a packaging plus a charger, like an adapter, plus a cable? Why you are all buying that from that factory? Or why are you putting it all in one technical file? Why you don't find a supplier for packaging? Why you don't find a supplier for the cables? Do you actually need to ship products with cables? Can the consumer just not buy a USB-C cable for charging himself, or does he already have? So I think you need to start make conscious choices. Reduce the problem first before you try to solve it. Yeah? And if the variable of compliance actually becomes packaging rather than product, and you have no idea who is making the packaging, then you see that the risk is actually not on your first tier product supplier, but on your continuously changing second tier packaging supplier. The box, the plastic, the tape, so many parts. So maybe it's time to design a proper packaging concept. Where to start? 2080. Start with that makes most impact for your business, and or where you can make the most result. So it could also be volume wise. Start with minimizing or start with optimizing the recyclability of the largest amount of packaging material. Just don't start with A and finish with Z. That doesn't make any sense. And I can tell you, do not hesitate to make unfavorable decisions in this part, because at many of the showrooms that we visit, I can tell you from what I see, the problem is way too big to be solved by the team that is there that wants to sell the products. And having said that, get the process there first and the quality of information second. If you have suppliers that have proper information, but you have no process to get that information and process that information, then you're stuck. Yeah. If you need more information from dedicated suppliers in a higher frequency, batch-based rather than SKU-based, then you need to have process optimization first. And you need to manage the performance of the supplier. Can they manage that process? And once they can, you want to have better information. And then you want to have proactive suppliers. And what we are doing with already running tests with many of our customers, that not only the new ones, but also one of the big ones that we have dealt with for the last 10 years, is that we together are looking into a new way of collecting the information. Not just collecting information and organizing the information at this end. No, collecting organized information. And remember, there's always a discussion, can this actually work? Remember that the way you make, no, the moment you make a decision about how you want to collect the information, the existence and quality of the information out there doesn't change. You could say, we're going to collect all the information around compliance in the market from tomorrow, and we're going to collect it by DHL. It doesn't change the quality of the information today. You need to pick a method that is suitable to improve the way you get information and deal with information, and that incentivize the way of improvement of your supply chain partner. And because if it doesn't improve at all, and Brussels adding complexity on top of it, I know what that will mean for your business. It will be the end of your business. Yeah. So in the next session with ProductIP, you will probably run into something that we call the prepaid file request, and it's working. You move suppliers from not willing to willing, and we move suppliers from that are willing from not able to able. Also, have an opinion about non-FO, what I call it. There's so much information shared in the supply chain that actually has no use or cannot be digested at all because it doesn't have a timestamp, for example. It doesn't have a reference, for example. It doesn't have an authorization. It's like people are building houses and they're walking around with drawings, and actually nobody knows, are these the last drawing of the house that we are building? What version actually does it have? Look at the quality of bill of materials that are out there. Yeah. How many of those actually have a document number and a revision status? If a factory is making products and cannot even manage the quality of the information, how likely is it that there's something wrong with with the things that they make? Or if you discover that something is not in order, how can you actually trace it back? You cannot. So if you don't know what part of information belongs to what batch, if batches becomes more important, then information should also be able to be pinpointed in batches. I call it move from non-FO to info. Yeah. A lot of people actually also often wonder, but what would be a budget that I need for dealing with product compliance in general? In average, 3 to 5% of your turnover, your sales, not your buying, your sales volume is what you need to reserve for dealing with product compliance and supply chain compliance. This includes insurances, being able to manage, prepare for and manage a recall. Paying for us is part of that. Your own team, audits, inspections, post-market surveillance means taking samples from the market and running tests as well. This exclude the testing and quality systems of the factory. This is what you need to be paying. And 3 to 5%, sometimes it moves up to 10 if the products are really, really complex. But 5%, if you are private label, if you are mark brand, definitely move to that. And I think many of the companies don't calculate that into the business model today. So if you want to make a decision, where should I say bye-bye to? And these are good parameters. I'm not inventing these parameters, by the way. Many of the legislation that is released by Brussels actually has a chapter that says what is the impact in terms of cost for small, medium-sized enterprises as well as large enterprises. And you will come up with similar figures. Having said that, if you're using ProductIP, thank you very much for that. If you don't, I would love, and the team would love it to serve you in the coming months and years ahead to deal with this tsunami. It's one thing to know that you don't know. It's much more interesting to know what you don't know, because then you actually can start working on that with your suppliers. Ready to instantly start. There's no investment needed. We are investing for all of you. That's called software as a service. I would say I've started in 2009. We really have a good track record to deal with this. If you are not ready for making a decision, or if you already have made a decision but still want to stay informed, I recommend strongly to start downloading the smartphone app by ProductIP for your iOS or Android devices. At least you see the main headlines passing by, which could also be next Compliance Tuesday, but also could be relevant information from Brussels or from some of the EU member states. And obviously, if you want to increase knowledge, besides the free Compliance Tuesdays, we also have paid trainings. A lot of the content is there in Productipedia, and a lot of content is already on YouTube available. Also, if you say, what about my suppliers in China? they cannot reach YouTube. We have a lot of information on video platforms behind the Chinese firewall available for them, often also in Chinese. Yeah? So we're ready for that. Let me quickly go to some of the last questions. Some of them are very specific. One or two, Auke, you have some questions. I will probably address that separately to you. Then, for now, thank you for becoming part of the change. I try to cap it just under 1 hour, almost, just 10 minutes more. Thank you all for bearing with me in this overview. I know when I made the overview, I still was quite overwhelmed. It was not my aim to overwhelm you, but probably it's good to use and share internally as well to say, listen, in plain street language, this is not BS that we are talking about. It's really a lot. Auke, you are right. It is a lot, but bring it down to what does it mean for product? What does it mean for process? What does it mean for packaging information? And what does it mean for supply chain? Keep it down to those four corners, because those four corners are more easily to recognize by your colleagues that are much more farther away from nitty-gritty of legal text or even a standard, but they can surely deal with those four corners. Thank you for now. Have a great Compliance Tuesday. Have a great year. See you soon. Bye-bye.